video with me, Ben Povey, and my special guest.
And Jacob Smith. Hello.
Yes. So, Jacob, you are a member of the Chatterboxes.
Yeah.
So, first of all, let's get to know you. So if you could describe yourself, like in, I don't know, a sentence, how would you describe yourself?
Well, I'm a 20-year-old college student. I study A-levels in film and media.
Mm-hmm.
Is that all right?
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
That's cool.
So what's it like to be you?
That's a very, very, very good question. Well, I can tell you this. I was a very, very, very different person to how I was 16 years ago. So I was born on the autistic spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Previously, back in, this is like 2003, right? So, this is even going back to 2002. So this goes back to 2002. I turned 3. By around that point, my parents found out that I was basically diagnosed with autism. Back in those days, they used to classify it as classic autism.
Mm-hmm.
From my understanding, my parents were very keen to basically not put me in a special needs school.
Yes.
My parents very much wanted to place me in a mainstream school where I could learn from my other peers and that sort of thing. When the primary reason to this was because the Department of Education would rather wanted to have me placed in a special needs school so that they could acquire more money from my family because of the funding and that my parents would have to pay to place me in a special needs school, where it was a lot cheaper to place me in a mainstream school and learn from my peers. And the way in which I was able to go into mainstream school was through a process called ABA, so Applied Behaviour and Analysis.
Yeah.
This was a system that was brought over from the US that was adapted into the UK by an agency in London. Mm-hmm. And so they would bring down people that were associated with the ABA program. They would bring them down from London to Bournemouth. And through that period of time, so when I was in primary school transitioning into secondary school, it was the the social skills to adapt and overcome, essentially.
Yeah.
And all of that, all of the skills that I had to learn over that period of time is how I'm at today. I would almost consider myself to, at that time, of being low functioning on the spectrum.
Yeah.
But as you can see, nowadays I'm far from that side.
So would you say, going back to when you said your parents were the school, trying to get the school system sorted, I see now there's a difference between mainstream and special needs. Now I went to mainstream first,
Cool.
and then I went to special needs.
Okay.
Now when I went to special needs, I see with special needs schools there's not an in between, is there? So you've got advanced special needs or mainstream. You haven't got in between. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get you.
You haven't got, because I've got cerebral palsy, but it's not severe cerebral palsy. So you haven't got in between those. Now, would you say that this is correct, or do you think that it's better to have that the way it is now?
So do you think that there needs to be something in between a special needs school and a mainstream school?
Yeah, or would you rather it be just the special needs but on like separately, or do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I get you. I'm a bit conflicted in regards to whether that should be the case, because there's all sorts of different schools. You have your grammar schools, and you have your private education, and the sort of money that goes into establishing these kinds of different education systems of schools. And I think it all depends on the individual and whether they have that support in place. So when I was in primary school, I had a lot of that, of those systems in place. So I had LSAs, I had staff support to assist in my social and practical skills and the lot. But I think it would be a very different outcome for someone that perhaps is on the spectrum or has a mental disability or a physical disability for that matter, and they don't have that support in place, so they don't have LSA staff and the sort, and they would have a really, really hard time. And I think it all depends primarily on how the schools, what support they have in place. If the schools have bugger all for not having the support in place, then I find this to be an easy scapegoat for them to say, yeah, your child should be in a special needs school or whatever, and then just send them off to a different place. I think it would be a very different if they actually had the time and money to put those systems in place, to have the LSA staff to support those with mental and physical disabilities, so that they can go through a mainstream school system.
And what's your understanding of, you specifically, what's your understanding of autism?
My understanding of autism is, I think honestly just different individuals. But this can also extend to how they view the world. I do consider this to be from a mental capacity standpoint. It may seem harsh, but that's how I sort of view it, and their way of processing.
Yeah, what's your way of processing?
Well, that's the difficult thing. I study a lot. I look at how other people communicate, and I've taken those techniques on and put it into my own way of communicating with people.
Yeah, because I was going to say, you seem to be, like, even the first question I asked you seem to be quite knowledgeable and know about all this. Like, you've given in like the space of 2 seconds the most advanced answers I've ever heard. So,
I mean, I say this, but then again, I can just blurt out a load of nonsense and just like belag it and go about making something just up on the spot. But that's just how I think things through.
No, I know you would. I totally understand. You wouldn't do that because, like, you obviously experienced it because you do have autism, and coming from a viewpoint that you've experienced it, you would know all this. You would want to study it. I studied my cerebral palsy for a while, and I wanted to understand it, so that's what I did. I studied it, and I think with knowledge comes a better understanding of others. Would you say?
Sure. Yeah. No, I would agree with that, and I would widen that to not just, I think, disabilities, but I think also like world affairs. You know, I looked at the world to be a very different place 16 years ago, even with what was going on at the time, you know, 9/11, the war in Afghanistan, and so forth. And I always thought of the world at that time to be a similar one to, I've said this before, but one of my favourite films is like Stuart Little 2. I really like that film on the basis that it's a whimsical interpretation of the world. And that was sort of my world viewpoint at the time. But then I realised at that point that people that had many different responsibilities, they would take advantage of their position in power and go about all sorts of different ways to go about just blagging it, essentially. In the case of you had different people in power. You had like George Bush and thinking that the war is over in Afghanistan, mission accomplished, and where that really wasn't the case, and he was just blagging it so he could just get through his term of office and then leave it for someone else to deal with.
Yeah. Now you say we say that it's good to have knowledge about it, but would you say some people, with non-disability, shall we say, I don't know, average,
middle of the road on the spectrum, I guess.
Yes. Not even with absolutely no disability at all. Would you say sometimes it's scary to them? So what would you say to them that want to, be involved with a disability person and just understand it, but are a bit scared and cautious of it? What would you say to them?
So to people that don't understand about disabilities or how to comprehend that.
Yes.
To what I would say to that is just a process of comprehension. I'm sure there's multiple different materials out there for people to understand how others communicate. One of the references of point that I like to direct people to is Louis Theroux. I really like Louis Theroux's documentaries. He did one about a group of people with autism in like American schools and how they communicate between their parents and themselves, and Louis Theroux, who's there on the scene to sort of analyse what's happening in the household and how they communicate with their peers. I like to direct people to that because I think it's a very blatant disparity within the documentary of how the parents communicate, how Louis Theroux communicates, and the people on the spectrum communicate between the adults and their peers.
Yeah. Are you okay with me asking how your parents are okay with with it? Like, how do they
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean they were pretty devastated when they found out that I had autism. Luckily, they knew the signs of autism beforehand because they had studied in further education with the NHS, so they knew the mental signs that someone was coming under the diagnosis of autism. And gradually over time, once I developed to this, mature understanding of comprehension, then I think it was just a case of, well, this is the way in which I communicated, and almost to the point of perhaps how someone else that wasn't on the spectrum would comprehend the world and sort. So
what led you to chatterboxes? Is that some of the things that led you to chatterboxes, or like having your autism, wanting to find others such as yourself, or?
Yeah, it was a similar situation, not direct, but it was a similar situation. So I was at multiple different projects. So I was with Action for Children. I was with Children's Services that was run by Bournemouth Council at the time. So I was with mainly those two. My parents had signed me up to do that. I would rather have just been at home on the Xbox or whatever. But they put me down for those because I was probably like 9 or 10 at the time. My parents couldn't really leave me alone in the house, so they signed me up to these different services, Action for Children, Bournemouth Council Services, whichever. And then because of the lack of funding that was going on at the time, both those projects got shut down. So I lost friends there that I knew about, and I haven't seen them since then. So that was quite the disparity. That was one of the major impacts of youth-led services like Action for Children and so forth being shut down.
Yeah.
And then my parents then found out about a group called Chatterboxes. It had only been established for about a year.
Yeah.
And then I went down to it. At first I wasn't as interested in what they were doing at the project. I wasn't really involved at the time because of all of the stuff that I was going through in secondary school. So I would much rather just be on the computer or whatever whilst they were off doing whatever it was, community-based action projects and the sort, where I was not interested in any of that.
Going into when I was about like 13, 14, at that time, our main CEO, Poppy, came in and came up with the brilliant idea of turning me into the film and media consultant for the Chatterboxes. So it kind of kicked off from there.
You've had quite a lot of experience through media-wise, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. So once that was incorporated in, and I could provide my perspective on the sort of film and media and photography topics, I was able to get more involved in with what was happening within the sessions. So I was able to advance from there and provide more of a leading role to support young members within the group, which led to becoming the first sort of EQA peer mentor, and going on from there to support sessions, to support young people and their workshops and that sort of thing.
So let's talk about how peer mentor works. So how did you start in terms of peer mentoring,
So this initiative started back in like 2016, I think. They asked me to become part of like this new initiative, and at the time I wasn't doing much, so it was like, yeah, go on. So I took part. It was like 3 weeks, I think, of like 2-hour sessions, I think, or something like that. So went into those sessions to train to become this AQA qualified peer mentor. And
what did you do in the training?
Loads of different things. So we did like confidentiality, safeguarding issues, communication between different people, and how they respond on a language basis. And we covered also on top of that case studies, so situations that young people could end up in, and how we would deal with said situations based on what we had covered unit criteria wise.
So give us an example.
So of a case study?
Yeah, of if you were peer mentoring someone, put me in a situation. Like if there was a certain situation, how would you do that? And so choose a situation or something.
Sure. Yeah. So the way I would go about this is I've had to deal with situations like this before, where a person has disclosed to me information that puts them in a vulnerable situation. I through questions and that sort of thing, and I'm able to get as much information that I can, because it's a safeguarding issue.
Yes,
it's a
obviously.
confidentiality issue. I then have to report back to staff to relay what was said by that person.
Sorry guys. We're talking about peer mentoring, but obviously, as Jacob said, for confidentiality reasons, we cannot reveal the actual situation. So if you're wondering about situations, don't. It's all about confidentiality. So
no, exactly. So I report back to a leading staff member within chat boxes, and I disclose what was said by that young person. That staff member would then go from there. They would have discussions with said person about what was said by peer mentor, and they would go on from there, whether that would be changes in their lifestyle, whether that would be criminal action would be taken against the individual that poses that person in a vulnerable position, and it's all done on a person by person basis, depending on
just
the
between
situation.
You and the person.
Yeah, exactly that. Like if it was a situation in which the person said, "Oh, I have a boyfriend or girlfriend," or whichever, like, oh, okay, that's cool. So that would just stay between. In our case, it'd be like you and I, right? But if it was a case of, like the person is like 15 and whoever they're dating is like 24 or whatever, and they're like, but they don't get, as long as they don't get angry at me, then that is what is known as a vulnerable, volatile situation that we would then have to relay back to staff.
Because it's not normal, is it? Really, it's not normal for a person of 15 or.
No, exactly. Yeah. Because I mean, there's the age
the
boundary
age gap,
situation, and then there's obviously the issues regarding the volatile abuse at said person. So that's one of the case studies that we get taught about whenever we go through the sort of like AQA peer mentor training.
Yeah. So earlier we were talking about bullying.
Yeah.
Can you give us how would you do if someone was being bullied? I came up to you and said, "I'm being bullied." Can you give me some methods on how to deal with it? What do I do? How do I stop it?
You discussed earlier there was a really, really good method about coping with stress, going for that relief, where you would write all of like your angry notes that you had at said person and throw them away in a bin, or jot it down on a piece of paper, and that's a sign of relief. If this were, it depends on the environment in question, what age that person is at in their life. Because this sort of bullying behaviour can happen anywhere. It can happen in schools, it can happen in colleges, it can even happen in the workplace, as unfortunate as it is. It can even happen in things like residential care, caring with elderly folks, and carers taking abuse, well, not taking abuse, but they abuse the fact that elderly people are in a vulnerable position, and so use that to their advantage. So it's multiple different environments and situations. The way I would go about this is just tell higher ups, and make sure that this sort of situation is known to those running the show, those in charge, and you'd hope that they would sort it out from there. If they don't, then it could be some serious drastic action, like making a change to your life. If this was like, say, a workplace environment, it could be a case of just moving to a new job, which is certainly a big undertaking. But it's a case of, if the workplace isn't there to support you, then there should be loads of legal requirements in place to sort of deal with these type of situations. But also, if it's known, this could have like a major impact on the company or the workplace that you work for.
Yeah.
I bring this up with something like Bournemouth and Paul College, right, where there wasn't any bullying there, but there was a situation in which I had exam preparations, right? So because I was diagnosed with autism, I had exam preparation conditions that we had set up beforehand. We clarified for a set date for like an exam, right? When it came to the exam day, they completely forgot about it, and I was chucked in a room full of kids and that sort of thing. So yeah, I go back to the learning resources department or whatever, and I'm like, hey, you forgot my exam arrangements. What happened?
Forgot my
They go through the folder and all of the folders and all that. I'm like, oh yeah, you do have exam conditions, and I'm like, thanks. I'm now, so I left the following month.
Right, I mean, honestly.
Yeah, exactly, because like the maths there was just awful. Especially given that they just forgot the fact that I had exam conditions, and so moved to Brockenhurst, which is I'm currently studying there at the moment. So that's like a sort of representation of, hey, this is where a workplace or a company could do bad. And you have that experience that you carry with you for the rest of your life, and you would discourage people like, hey, don't go to that place because they didn't treat me fairly under the right pretense.
Under the right circumstances.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jacob, are you up for a tough question?
Sure, yeah, go on. I'm up for any question that's
quite personal.
thrown my way. Yeah, sure.
Have you ever been bullied yourself?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think any person going through secondary school life has. I mean, generally speaking, right? I mean, secondary school is pants, right? It's just pretty bad. I could use
Completely agree.
I could use more vulgar language, but hey, this is a family channel, so I won't go into that sort of description. But
I was gonna stop you.
But generally, like secondary school life is just pretty bad. Generally, because you have people that may perhaps not have the communication skills to understand a very different person, such as myself, right? And so you're going to come face to face with like different people from different backgrounds and different circumstances, and it can very well be a case of like you're going to come across people that hate your guts, right? But you wipe the slate clean, move on. Once you get to college, what I generally find, at least in the field that I work in, so like film and media studies,
it gets better.
Yeah, people are quite respectful. They get on with the work, and they have their own communities and friendships.
Now, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm in college.
Yeah.
Although, whilst the topics and criteria, grade, exam, condition board, whatever, what I'm covering is like it's not very collaborative. It's not very community involved. People still respect each other, and they're able to coexist with one another.
Now, Jacob, this interview has been going on for quite a while now.
Yes.
Not that I don't love hearing from you. You're a very intelligent guy. I did actually make a video about because I put a trailer up about you with your interview.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw it. Did you see it?
I did indeed. Yeah, no, it's cool.
Yeah. Anyway, and I just said that I was just saying that the trailer that was just a trailer. That was just telling you, because everyone was like, "Where's the interview? Where's the actual interview?"
After all this time,
Yes.
within the space of a month.
Absolutely,
Like
yeah. Well, the reason is obviously you guys know there's someone at the door. You guys know I've been ill, and you know all that, but that's not.
Just keep
Sorry.
recording.
Yes. As I was saying, what was I saying?
About your trailer.
Yes, my trailer. Yes, there is a trailer. I did a trailer about you. I was just saying that you're a very intelligent guy, and I'd love to hear more from you. But unfortunately, we have to keep these interviews within a certain time.
It's brief.
We don't want to drag it on, but there is a bright side. Because you are so awesome and you are so intelligent,
Yeah.
I would like to do a part 2 of you, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, no, enjoyed discussion. I'm sure there's plenty of other questions I'll be able
Absolutely,
to ask.
there's millions of other questions that
Yeah,
can come up
good
with.
stuff.
Okay.
Excellent. But yeah, no, thank you very much.
Is there
for
anything
having
you'd
me
like to
on.
plug or say? Anything you want to...
Not particularly, no. I just think that it's really good that you bring people like myself on to that may not necessarily have the will to express their thoughts and opinions and that sort of thing. So I'm glad you're bringing people like myself on, and I appreciate what you do. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Next time we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. So next interview, it's
Sure.
your interview. You can talk about whatever you
Oh,
want.
brilliant. That's great. I can't wait. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Alright guys, we'll end it there. Please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Actually, would you subscribe to the Ben Povey TV channel?
I would indeed subscribe to the Ben Povey YouTube channel.
Yes, so
Awesome.
please do subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Would you put the thumbs up?
Yes, thumbs up. Yes.
See you later.
Thumbs up for all the folks. Goodbye.
See you later.